Good morning, Facebook. Jackie Broman here from TBA Law. This is take 2 because our NBN connection is so poor this morning that I had to turn off the Wi-Fi, and I'm doing this on 4G. Thankfully, the mobile service works even though NBN doesn't. Anyway, today I wanted to talk a little bit about aged care bonds. I don't often give advice on this, but sometimes when I've done a power of attorney for someone, oh hi Tracy, nice to see you. The attorney will often come back in for some advice from me to help out if they're trying to get their elderly parent or whoever the person is into care. There's also a bit of a misconception around the aged care bond that people think it's lost money, but the majority of it is refundable. You get that back either if an elderly person transfers their facility or they pass away. So it is money that comes back into the estate. So aged care bonds are now called refundable accommodation deposits, or RADs. Now there's a number of components to the aged care fees. There's the daily care fee. Now that is payable by anyone on respite or in permanent care, and it is capped at 85% of pension generally, which is about $50 a day. On top of that, once someone goes into permanent care, there's also an additional care fee other than the daily care fee of a means tested care fee. So some people may not have to pay any more than the daily care fee, but most people will have to make an additional payment. And then there's the accommodation payment. So that can either be made as a lump sum or it can be made as an ongoing daily accommodation payment as well. So I recently had a lady, and I've changed the names and a little bit of the circumstances to give you a bit of a case study. So Janet came to me appointed under an attorney, a power of attorney. She had been living with her mum for the last 10 years or so. She'd moved back in with her mum after her own marriage had broken down. A few years ago I'd seen her mum and we'd done powers of attorney, but more recently her mum had been diagnosed with dementia, and it was getting to the point where she'd been in respite a few times and that it was too difficult to have her at home. So they were looking at starting to transition into permanent aged care for her mum. So there was a couple of concerns. Firstly, Janet was concerned about how much her mum might have to pay as a lump sum to go into care. Her mum only had the house that they were living in, and the contents and a little bit of cash in the bank, about $15,000 or so not much. So I was able to let her know that as her mum's carer, the house was going to be exempt from that test. So there wouldn't have had to have been a bond paid based on her asset test. So she would go in on a daily care fee and potentially paying some additional daily means tested care fee, but shouldn't have to pay an accommodation bond up front. The difficulty though would have been that the test is slightly different for the accommodation deposit compared to a Centrelink pension test. So the house would have continued to be exempt for 2 years after her mum had left, and then Centrelink would have deemed the house as an investment property, and potentially it would have affected her mum's pension then. So Janet essentially had a 2-year block to work out whether she was going to start paying rent or whether they were then going to sell the house and pay the money in as an accommodation deposit, or potentially she had some of her own money aside, whether she was going to loan her mum some money to pay a accommodation deposit. So they had a 2-year gap there to work that out. But I do recommend to people to go off and see a specialist in financial planning for aged care if it gets to that point where they're working out whether it's more beneficial to sell a house or sell an investment property or not, because I can't give people advice on that. I can look at the aged care agreement and give people general advice about whether what they're paying is refundable and what parts are refundable or not. But I just wanted to firstly dispel that myth that a lump sum paid to an aged care facility is not refundable. It certainly is. You get it back. The second thing to note is that people are often concerned that if their parent has nothing, that they're not going to find a place in aged care. But it's often the reverse, in fact. Most aged care facilities have to have a percentage of people who are low means to get their government funding. So there's often more spaces for people on low means than fee paying, particularly in regional areas. And thirdly, what you pay to the aged care facility is broken up into certain different things. So you've got your daily care fee, which is the 85% of the pension. You've got a top up on the daily care fee, which is a means tested care fee. And then you've got your accommodation payment. All right, so it's broken up into multiple things there. So if you have any further questions about aged care, certainly reach out, particularly if you're concerned about a deposit that may have been paid, also holding aged care facilities to account, because there's often interest that needs to be paid to an estate after someone passes away as well. So all these things need to be thought about. Again, my name is Jackie. You can reach out to me through Facebook or through our website, and I'll get back to you by email within 24 hours. Again, doing these little videos every week, so you can tune in and find out what little topic I'm covering. And if you have any requests for topic, then again, just send me a message on Facebook. Otherwise, have a great week, and I'll see you next week.